So we're beginning our second week exploring the notion of transcendence. Last week, Joanna said the most radical thing a Unitarian Universalist minister might ever say. She said, I believe in God. I believe in God. I believe in God. She said it out loud, and then she kind of freaked out that somebody heard her, and what would they think, and who would they think she was, and what would you think it meant? And I must admit that even as I watched it, I worried that some of you would say, I am out of here. It's funny, we can sing that word, and we can hear that word, but when someone says it to us, it's a little bit scary. I think it's a word that's so misused and so abused. I frankly avoid it as a word, not as a notion, not as the notion of flow, the notion of energy, the notion of the universe having some kind of mystery that holds us. But I must admit that the word God creates so many problems that I'm unlikely to use it. I think of times I have used it. One time back when I worked at the national headquarters of the Unitarian Universalist Association, I would travel around and preach a lot. And so I preached in a congregation, and I must have used the word God. And a woman came up to me afterwards and she said, I don't understand why you from the UUA are always trying to convert us to Christianity. And I said, what? Because I'm not Christian. I didn't grow up Christian. I'm not Christian. I've got good friends who are Christian. I'm not Christian. So I said, why do you think I was trying? What did I say to make you think I was trying to convert you to Christianity? And she said, you said God. That in turn made me think of a story that Joseph Campbell, I don't know if you know about his work, but he spent his whole lifetime studying world mythologies and writing about mythology. And Joseph Campbell described a book tour that he did after he wrote the book, The Power of Myth. And he said often the interviews would start with the question, what is a myth? He said that's a good question. And so he would answer it, a myth shapes a culture. It gives stories to shape a culture so people understand their purpose and what they're doing and gives them a language to speak. He said he came to one urban environment for a live half-hour show. And as the lights were getting ready to blink, so the radio was going to start, the guy said to him, I warn you, I'm going to put it to you. I'm not going to make this easy for you. I'm a lawyer. And so the red light went on, and the guy said, a myth is a lie. And Joseph Campbell said, no, a myth is a story that explains the purpose of people's life and how things are held together and what makes sense. And the guy said, a myth is a lie. And Joseph Campbell said, a myth is a metaphor. It points to meaning. It isn't ultimately the meaning. It points to it. And the guy said, metaphors are lies. And so they went back and forth. A metaphor is a lie. No, a metaphor is part of a mythology. A metaphor is a lie. So he said, finally, Campbell got really frustrated. And he'd been a teacher at Sarah Lawrence for years. And he said he put those skills to use. So he says to the guy, what is a metaphor? Because it was becoming clear to him that the guy didn't know what a metaphor is. And the guy said, you tell me what's a metaphor. And Campbell said, no, I'm asking the questions now. What is a metaphor? And the guy said, all right, my friend Joseph runs really fast. Joseph runs like a deer. That's a metaphor. And Campbell said, no, a metaphor is Joseph is a deer. And the man said, that's a lie. And Campbell said, that's a metaphor. And then the show ended. And Campbell concluded with this paragraph that I think is profound. Campbell says, it made me reflect that half the people in the world think that the metaphors of their religious traditions are facts. And the other half contends that they are not facts at all. As a result, we have people who consider themselves believers because they accept metaphors as facts. And we have others who classify themselves as atheists because they think religious metaphors are lies. So that to me sums up why the word God is so difficult, because many of the people who use God think of God as a fact, as a tiny, in my opinion, tiny, narrow reality that there is God and there is not God, and they can define God. My friend Jim studied to be a Lutheran minister, and he, after seminary, he went to visit a small congregation up in northern Minnesota. And they called him. When he came home, his phone was ringing. This was before cell phones. So he walked in the door and the phone was ringing. And of course, he had a few hours to think on the way home. And so it was the search committee. They said, Reverend Mason, God told us to call you. God said you're supposed to be our next minister. And he said, that's really funny, because when I was driving home, God told me, don't go into the parish ministry at all. You don't belong there. So clearly, though we hear instruction, though we hear a call, it's not to say that it's God saying something, is to use a shorthand sometimes that really becomes unhelpful. I believe that the entire universe is alive. I love gardening because it connects me to life. And I love the beauty of the patterns that you see in the universe. You know how lightning bolts look like tree roots, look like the veins in our bodies, how the tiny and the giant really have the same patterns. So some people would see that as evidence of God creating something on the seventh day with intelligent design. I myself was much more excited to find this book, Design in Nature, by Adrian Bejan and J. Peter Zane. It says, it's subtitled, the subtitle is How the Constructal Law Governs Evolution in Biology, Physics, Technology, and Social Organizations. And it's a really fascinating book. And his basic premise is that all of life is structured in ways that provide the easiest access for currents. And so one of those ways is that kind of branching that we see in lightning and in trees. I don't pretend to understand a lot of what he's talking about. I don't even know if it's good physics because I'm not a scientist. But I love to read books where scientists are trying to put together the amazing mystery and use our brains, which of course are something we were given as a gift, use our brains to go as far as we can to understanding the mystery. The people who I know who do that also understand that there's an edge over which we can't go. We're born from the mystery, we die into the mystery, and there's just a lot we won't know. I have to say, for me, the language of interdependence is the most powerful language I find to describe the transcendent. You know how it's you and it's another person, but when you're together, the relationship is bigger than the two of you. You know, you get so excited talking, or you have an idea you never would have had, or you come to emotions that you couldn't have had alone, or whatever it is, there's something in the relating that's bigger than the two of you. For me, that's how I understand transcendence. It's that connective power. It's, you know, the interdependent web. It's the river basins and the veins. It's the stars that are held in their places, and you know, the earth in its orbit. It's all of that relationship that we have. And I think when we pray, when we try to find our relationship with the transcendent, what we're doing is trying to enter the relationship with that life force, with that flow, with that energy. Every day I wake up and I pray for CLF. That means that what I do is I align my energy with my highest wishes for what CLF could become in the world, for what this community could do, for what we could offer to help this ailing, hurting world. Every day I align myself with that, and every day I'm awed by who comes and finds me and talks to me, who offers their gifts, musicians, writers, thinkers, dream analysts, all kinds of people, teachers, come and say, I want to be part of this. I want to align myself with it. What I want flowing through this community is a loving place where we can use language, maybe not even understand how each other use it, but use it always as a tool to more understanding, to more relationship, to deeper connection. May we never use words of any kind, religious or secular, to judge or to demean each other. May we always know that we come from and return to a mystery so vast that any words we can find to describe it are metaphors, incomplete, inadequate, and still the best poetry that we can find to speak to one another. So may this community hold you, hold your biggest self, hold your edges, whatever they are, however you use the word God or don't use the word God, however you use the word transcendence, may this be a community that connects you to the interdependent web of life and holds you to the flow of life that brings you the most vitality that you can imagine.